really need to give fair credit. There's even people on this call that have contributed to this presentation. This is a compilation, an assembly of different techniques that we have used very effectively within GAP to work effectively with remote teams in an Agile environment. And this presentation was first prepared for Agile Austin 2 years ago, and it was very well attended. And hopefully you'll find in here a few bits of best practices or little nuggets that you can use in your teams now. So as you can see, I'm broadcasting from my home office. Imagine everyone is watching from their home office as well. It's interesting how these best practices that we take as normal course of business every day become even more important when we have this current crisis. And a number of teams are working from home that never worked from home before, or now we're 100% work from home and we're used to at least some face-to-face time. So it's even more important to think about some good practices to keep teams healthy, to keep yourself engaged and encouraged. And I hope that there's some good ideas here for you. I will keep the chat window open. And if you like to raise questions during the presentation, please feel free. You can chat in the group chat window, or you can open your microphone and ask a question. It's perfectly fine. I'd like it to be as interactive as possible. So the first thing I'd like to do is just to take a moment and talk about what are the challenges, what are the things that people worry about with having remote teams. When you think about going completely remote, what are the things that worry you most? So take just 1 minute to think about those, and then put some of your ideas in the chat box, and we'll start from there. Yeah, these are great examples. Not being able to respond quickly to change, how to synchronize just the logistics of people, losing touch with what's going on, and trying to figure out how do you find somebody. Many of these are common challenges. Reading emotion, body language, understanding how people are feeling, much more difficult with just text messages or email. I'm sure everybody's had the circumstance where somebody sent a message, an email, or a text message without an emoji, and you thought maybe they were angry, but they were not at all. Or maybe you thought they were fine, but they were really frustrated. These things happen a lot. Um, Technology breakdowns, how to plan for the future. Yep. How to deal with people that are not online at working hours, lack of communication. Yeah, and Tatiana, this was an interesting one. An accident in home being considered a work incident. I think, I think that's a interesting challenge. Just not only from a practical matter, but also from a legal perspective. Who's responsible? It's challenging. And yeah, it does. I think that the responsibility does depend not only on the agreement with the company, but the country that they're operating in and the insurance coverage terms. So Angie jumped in on the specifics on that one. Being part of the team, feeling motivated. These are all really great examples. And I'll tell you, I've asked these same questions to multiple groups, and you'll see some familiar answers here. If I can get it to advance to the next slide, speaking of technology. There we go. So it's hard to do some of these things when you're remote. You miss the water cooler talk or coffee time with the team. We'll talk about a lot of these kind of circumstances and some of the techniques that we've come up with to deal with those and to overcome some of these challenges. There's no perfect solution, but there's some techniques that we can deal with a lot of these, that the emotional connection. And what you'll see is, because people are by nature social beings, a lot of this is about the psychology of connecting, and we're very, very focused. There's wiring deep in our brains that draws us toward connection with one another. And some of that is visual, and some of it is audio. Some of it is in person, is tactile, and so we have to do some things to compensate for that. There was a study that was done by University College London that looked at different types, different mediums for communication. And they ranked them from rich medium, the richest would be face-to-face in person, to a lean medium. And the most lean medium would be bulk mail or bulk email. It's not even personal. It's just going out to everybody. And there's a continuum in between. And they did a study to look at what is the effectiveness of communication as you work through these different media. And they determined that the more rich medium actually had increased if a direct relationship to efficiency and effectiveness of communication. And they measured how well was the message understood, how was the reaction to the message, did the content come across properly, did the emotion come across properly. They did find an interesting point, and there was another study that had instant messaging and audio only reversed. So in this chart, you'll see that instant messaging is right in the middle, chat, and that audio is slightly better. But in a different study, they determined in some circumstances, instant messaging and chat is actually more effective than audio communication. And the main conclusion that they drew about it was that because chat is asynchronous, it can be much more effective for short pieces of information, for simple broadcast and quick exchanges of information. That the fact that it's asynchronous, that I can post something and then you can read it 10 minutes later, and then you can post back 15 minutes later, does increase efficiency of communication a little bit. And of course, as we become more and more familiar, and we're using chat all the time in our personal lives on our phones, it's only natural that it would become an important part of what we're doing in the work world as well. But we'll talk a little bit about the different, these different media, and which ones work in which circumstances and how to use them to our best advantage. So this is what we've concluded as a set of best practices by channel. We encourage doing a lot of video, frequent video, because we are such visual beings as well, that using video for things that require a lot of context, as you pointed out earlier, where body language or emotion are important. So one-on-one meetings, stand-up meetings, requirements reviews where you're going through a lot of details. These are all really great opportunities, and are well advised to use video as the medium. But there's a lot of stuff that falls into this middle ground, like quick notifications. I mean, Slack became huge simply because they had integrations. And so for technology companies, you could integrate with the build system, so it could automatically send messages about new updates available, new build in progress, deployed into QA, ready to deploy to production, pull notifications, those kinds of things. So when you're just synchronizing notifications, quick status checks, or just for fun, water cooler talk is perfect for chat. And at Gap, if for the Gapsters on the call, you know that we have the random channel for that, where people post just about anything. And there's all kinds of great channels where people are sharing music and interest about pets and just common personal things. And then for email, it still has a role. It is effective for complex broadcast of communication. So if there's a lot of detail that needs to be shared, providing email for that that can also be used as a reference is really valuable. If you've made some kind of an agreement during a verbal conversation, an email to document that agreement, make sure everybody's on the same page is helpful, or sharing action items. We've found recently, at least internally, on some of our complex broadcast communication, now we do dual mode. We are broadcasting those by recording short video clips, as well as sending out email. So sending recorded videos can also be a good way for broadcast information. And that's not on the slide here, but that's something that we've been doing much more frequently in the last year. Any questions so far?
No, sir.
Okay. So let's talk about the trust issues, and we'll start with some anti-patterns. Uh, these are some real stories. The names have been changed to protect the innocent. Uh, the we encountered, and I think there were a couple of examples in your notes as well around people being unsure of when to reach someone. We had a situation where a tech lead in the US was working with a developer in Latin America, and they were frustrated. Like, this person is unresponsive. I don't think they're ever working. I can't ever reach them. When we looked into it a little bit deeper, what we discovered was that they were their time zone was 1 hour different, and a lot of the messages were happening either during lunchtime for the person in LATAM or after the end of their workday. And so there just wasn't a clear understanding or protocol for what's the expectation of when can I reach you? Like, the mental picture that someone had in their mind was, I should be able to reach you anytime I'm at my own desk. But they really didn't think about the logistics of, okay, we're 1 hour off in time zone. So when it's late morning for me, it's lunchtime for them. When it's early afternoon for them, I'm at lunch, and then they're leaving work before I'm finished for the day. So so this misunderstanding of availability and time zone is a great anti-pattern of trust. It creates doubt and uncertainty, and people are like, well, are they not responding to me because they don't care, or what's going on here? And in that same case, the response of the technical lead was to institute micromanagement, institute more and stronger monitoring, because they began to have doubts. Then they wanted the developers to provide bullet by bullet, what am I working on each hour of the day? And if you've been on the receiving end of that, you know that that's extremely frustrating, because now you're thinking, hey, I'm a professional and you're treating me like a school child. This is, unreasonable. So now I'm angry about it. The technical lead is upset and thinks that something's gone wrong. But micromanagement and adding intense layers of monitoring really just erodes the trust and creates an even more toxic environment. Another anti-pattern for trust is a false sense of urgency. So we have a common story in the United States called the boy who called wolf. And this is the one where he's out watching the sheep, and he gets bored. And so he cries, "There's a wolf." And everyone came rushing to his aid, and he loved the excitement and the attention. And every day this went on, he would get bored, he would cry wolf, and the people would come to see, and there was nothing. Then one day a wolf actually did come and was trying to kill the sheep, and the boy cried, "Wolf, wolf." But nobody in the city listened to come to his aid because they had heard it so many times. They were over it. The same things happen in software, where if you aren't clear about expectations, if you try to create a false sense of urgency when there really is no crisis or no urgency, then it erodes trust and erodes confidence and working relationships as well. Politeness is much more important in a remote environment. If we're rude to each other or interrupt one another, it can erode communication. And as you pointed out during the brainstorming, it's really hard to read people's emotions. So you can erode that, that social protocol, that confidence, and not even know it until it's actually created a big impact in the trust between the people in the team. And then trolls are an anti-pattern, right? Just anybody who's just trying to throw a monkey wrench in the works, trying to stir things up, and take a negative view, it is also an anti-pattern for trust. So we want to avoid these things, and I think some of the techniques that we use can help with that. So first and most important is to start with face-to-face. We recommend as a best practice, even when we're talking with clients before they even sign with Gap, that it's a best practice to very early get the teams together to meet face-to-face, meet the product owner, meet the chief data officer, meet the other team members that you're going to work with. Having that personal connection is super important. So we recommend doing some type of kickoff activity for major programs or new teams, and then trying to repeat that ideally once per quarter, once per 3 months, is really, really helpful. Sometimes it's not practical to do that with everybody because they're very large teams. In that case, we recommend doing an ambassador program where a single person can go representing the team and come back and bring the stories and make the connection, and then rotate that assignment so you can connect with different people and build more relationships over time. You can tie together with face-to-face the opportunity to build engagement. And what I mean by that is helping people connect with the larger goals of what we're working toward. So sharing information like company goals, marketing programs, how the product's being used, feedback from actual users, connecting them with the customer service organization are extremely valuable. One of the best examples of that that I can recall was last year. One of our clients here in Austin invited their team to come. They were doing some program increment planning, PI planning, for a 6-month release cycle that they were working on. As part of that, they made a field trip, and they took 2 hours out of the day, and they left the office and they went to visit one of the customers that's using that software in their business. And the customers showed them how they're using the software, and they told them, what their mission was and how the software was helping them to accomplish their mission. It created tremendous connection between the team, real passion for the things that we're building. And it also helps to give real context to the requirements and user stories and the structure of the analysis that's going on to really understand firsthand how people are working and using the tools. But creating that exposure helps to create connection. So I think it's very important, especially in a remote environment. Let's not just be engineers about this and share just the things that are task related, like these are the things that you need to know, and these are the things that I need to know, and we stop there. It's important to go around the edges and share additional information to add color and context. Any questions or ideas that you guys have had so far around ownership and engagement and face-to-face? We talked a moment ago about some of the anti-patterns around confusion and misunderstandings eroding trust. So one of the really effective tools that we've used in this case is to establish some rules of engagement. I recommend this for every team, and even to revisit them from time to time, because the team dynamic changes, and you get to know each other better, and the rules and how you engage with each other will evolve naturally over time. So once every 6 months, once a year, I think even with a long-standing team, it's worthwhile to look back at rules of engagement. And it's really simple things. The communication protocol, this example was how we ended up solving the communication story that I talked about earlier with time zone. Simply expressing expectations that, hey, if I really need you, I'm going to reach out to you on Slack, and if I don't hear back from you in an hour, then it's going to bother me. It's really urgent. Or, you know, if I send you an email, then I'm not really expecting anything back for several days. That's the slow path. But just voicing some of those expectations, finding a realistic compromise in the areas where you may have disagreements. It's better to get those conversations out up front than when you're right in the middle of an intense release, or you're running behind schedule, or you encounter some unexpected technical issue. It's nice to have all these agreements set out in front. So when should we be expected to reach each other? What kind of response time should we expect? And who do we go to for which type of things? Are all really good protocols to include in your rules of engagement. Also things like what are your work hours? Just simply understanding, hey, normally I come into the office at 7, I home at 4 in Central Time, and so for you that's 9 and 6, or it's 5 and 2, or whatever the case may be. Just having an awareness of each other's schedules is helpful. It also helps you to work logistics, especially if you have teams that are separated by multiple time zones. We encounter usually the worst case is a 2-hour difference. But even then, if the stand-ups were traditionally first thing in the morning, but that is 7:30 a.m. for one team and 5:30 a.m. for another team, you can see that could create some pain. So if you have meetings, regular standing meetings that create some uncomfortable times, it just happens to fall during lunchtime or the beginning of the day or the end of the day where there's a schedule conflict, at least share the pain of those meetings. If it has to be in the middle of the day and it's always in somebody's lunchtime, alternate. This month it's going to be in this team's lunchtime. Next month it's going to be in the next team's lunchtime. Then everyone understands it's complicated, and we're all kind of giving and rowing in the same direction. But just navigating some of these simple things up front in rules of engagement is really helpful. And we've done something as simple as just get together to figure out rules of engagement, put them on sticky notes, put them on the wall, and then eliminate the ones that you don't think you need, consolidate down to a simple set that you can all agree on. One thing that happens naturally over time, if you look at really effective teams, they have a team identity. There's like a subculture built around that team, and it's about how they talk to each other, the stories they tell, the jokes, the time they spend with each other. So this cultural aspect is important to acknowledge. Starting off, because we're an international company, we're working with different cultures. We're working with the U.S. culture. We're working with the Colombian culture. We're working with Costa Rican culture. And then there's certainly subcultures here within those countries as well. So acknowledging that each person comes with a unique background and a unique perspective and culture is important to get out up front. Different people define rude behavior in different ways. What is considered rude behavior in Atlanta, Georgia, could be considered completely normal behavior in Boston, Massachusetts, and that holds true across many different groups and cultures. So one way to begin to explore that is to create space for people to share common interests, to connect as people, and to begin to share stories about themselves and the way they live. The Slack channels that I mentioned before is one way to do that. We've also encouraged doing some kind of reward system, even if it's the crown prize that you get to use as your avatar for a month. Having some type of team rewards where within the team they recognize each other's contributions, and that they have some kind of shared incentive to work together is really great. We even recommend simple things like if you're going to have a release party, have the release party in all the locations all at the same time, even if there's just one person in a location, right? Have them stop, join them in by Skype or through social media or something, but have that team bonding by doing common activities and common celebrations. And when you're building a team from the very start, emphasize early progress. So try to find early wins, congratulate each other on accomplishments, even if they're small. Establishing a track record of success helps to build that team subculture, build the confidence, and build the connections that make really strong teams into amazing teams. I'll pause for a moment and see if there's any questions. I don't see anything in the group chat at the moment.
Well, maybe I have a question regarding the awards, the team selected awards. Are you able to hear me?
Oh, that's better. Yes.
Okay, sorry. Regarding the team selected awards, it's a great idea, and maybe you have some examples that you can share after this meeting or something. Maybe I can use some of that. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, I can even share a couple of ideas now. One of the teams would give an award for the person that was the most helpful to their teammates during each sprint. and there was a little Lego character that that was basically the trophy, and each location had one of these Lego characters. So the team would vote each sprint, and then whoever won the award for that sprint would have the Lego character on their desktop for the next sprint, and then it would pass like a trophy to the next person. I think the one thing you have to be careful about on the team awards is just to make sure that you're choosing the right criteria. I recommend that it be based on something around teamwork and how people work together with each other, rather than necessarily who was the biggest individual hero, to help build team connection. It's really helpful to do that. We also had this was years ago, but we had a team that they were having issues with the build. The build kept getting broken. People would check in bad code, and the build would break. And it would usually happen at the end of the day, and that person was already gone, and so then it was a problem. So they brought in a grass hula skirt, one of the ones you tie around your waist, made out of grass that you wear. And if it turns out that you were the one that broke the build, the hula skirt would be hanging on your monitor in the morning, and you had to wear it all the next day. And it became this tradition with that team, in fact, to the point where their daily stand-up, they called it the hula meeting. And everybody knew the story. Like if they saw somebody in the hallway with the hula skirt on, they knew exactly what had happened the day before. So doing silly things like that is not only an effective deterrent because nobody wanted to break the build, but it was also fun. And everybody understood mistakes happen, and nobody really got mad at anybody. But it was the big joke to see who was holding the hula skirt in the morning. And again, you have to be creative. If you have people in multiple locations, then you have to do a little bit of advanced work to make sure you've got the physical thing in each of the spaces. You may have tried some of these. This goes to the point of talking about things that are outside the task orientation of what's right in front of us as engineers, and that's icebreakers, including some kind of personal connection is a great way to build teamwork, to have fun, and add a social aspect to work. And I think especially now when we're forced to be apart for many weeks, I think these can be really good ways to refresh our brains, refresh our connections. And we've got a number of different examples that I'll share with you about different icebreakers. There's a lot of you can find a lot of content on the internet as well. But some of the ones that we like is from a power of positive thinking, telling something that made you happy in the last day, or something that you're looking forward to. It makes you happy. It makes you smile. It makes the other people around you smile and creates a positive environment. We also do an icebreaker that is 2 pictures about me. Oops. Oh, my little pictures went away. Oh, darn. I had two crazy pictures of me. But you put everybody submits two pictures about themselves, and they share the picture and tell the story behind it. Other things you can do with pictures, and this works great remotely because you can submit the pictures digitally. Send in pictures of your shoes. Everybody takes a picture of their shoes and sends it in, and then you try to guess whose shoe goes with which person. That can be fun. Baby pictures is another one. You can do that same way. Submit your baby pictures ahead of time and then guess whose baby picture is which. Pets. You can also have people submit ahead of time a list of things about themselves that probably nobody in the room knows. And then you try to match, okay, who is it that doesn't like chocolate? Or who is it that when they were growing up had hair all the way back down to the back of their back, or had a ponytail? Whatever facts you can, and have a little fun learning about each other. Oh, here we go. So baby pictures. There's baby Paul. And a couple of different facts about me. Some of you may know I'm a martial arts student. So that's one of my martial arts instructors with me when I got promoted to my blue senior belt. And the picture on the left there is one of my loves of my life. Her name is Alice. She is a white Harley Davidson police motorcycle. You can also find some good team building capabilities. One of the games that I think is really fun is Keep Talking and Nobody Explodes. It's a really fun game to play for team building. We've also done team scavenger hunts, so you can share a list out digitally to everybody, and then they go take pictures of certain items and come back with those pictures to win the scavenger hunt. Those are fun. And then I mentioned earlier, having a channel to share off-topic content. Oh yeah, that's a good one, Sebastian. To share two true things and one lie, and everybody had to figure out which one was the lie.
Yes, that one was really funny because in the end you ended up knowing a lot of everyone else's life, but by that sharing experience.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to share it with you.
Yeah, that's a great one. And you also learn who is a good liar.
Definitely.
Does anybody else have examples of team building activities that they've enjoyed doing, or icebreakers that they've used?
Actually, I think I know one. We use it in one retrospective that we had. It's like Google Maps. So it's showing you one place, but you don't know where that place is. So the idea is to checking around and moving around, trying to identify when you are. And it's good because you see around and you try to see the language and maybe the titles, and it's you spend good time trying to guess where you are located.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's like a video. You're a virtual reality kind of thing, looking around the space.
Yeah, it's a good one.
That sounds fun. Thank you for sharing.
Okay.
One of the tough things to do is to do big planning activities. So if you're doing a big sprint or release planning activity, a couple of things come into play. One is because you're remote and conversation isn't as easy, you'll tend to want to have more detail in the product backlog than you would otherwise. One of the techniques that we've used very effectively is to do backlog grooming, to have a couple of people look at the backlog ahead of time. A lot of times it'll be product owner, tech lead, and QA lead, for example, to look at the stories, figure out what questions they would have about those, try to make sure that those things get answered ahead of time to make the meeting go faster and be more efficient, and try to have the background information a little bit more robust. Excuse me. Also, you might consider, because these meetings can be really long, is to split them into multiple meetings, where you have one meeting where you talk about the requirements and do requirements review, and then the teams go off and spend some time doing local planning, teams or individuals, like thinking about the requirements, doing some local planning, and then come back together to coordinate afterwards. There's some pluses and minuses. If you do 2 meetings, it tends to take longer because it gets spread out over maybe 2 days, where you could have done it in half a day or 1 day. But you have the advantage of things are a little bit more bite-sized, easier to deal with. If you do 1 meeting, you tend to get it done a lot faster in elapsed time. But the downside is long video calls, and you guys know how difficult that is. Yeah, Nelson, PI planning, exactly. PI planning for SAFE is a good example. It can be grueling if you're just in hour after hour of video meeting. Wrong direction. For daily stand-ups, I think using video whenever possible is important, and make sure everybody knows who's talking. You can also turn this one into a game. We had a relatively new team. It was really in 2 different main locations, and we created pictures with the person's name on it that was talking, and we were just doing audio conference. We didn't have video, and what we would do is try to guess who was talking. We would hold up the picture of who we thought it was that was talking, as kind of a mystery guessing game. One interesting thing that I discovered in that is that we are so connected with the face and facial expressions that if I was holding up somebody's picture that was talking on the phone, if someone asked them a question, they would actually turn and look at the photograph and ask the question to the piece of paper. It's really, really interesting how connected we are to seeing each other's faces and communicating and facial expressions. So using video is super important. If you've ever been the one person that was remote and there was a room with 6 people all around a speakerphone, you know why I named this other one in bold. Everyone use headsets. Whenever possible, if you're going distributed, have everybody distributed. Even if you're in the same room, having multiple computers and using headsets helps to make sure that everybody can be heard. and it also tends to leave a little bit more open space, because when people are on headsets, they'll tend to pause a little bit more and leave room for conversation. For some reason, if we're all in the room together, we tend to just talk on top of each other. And so you can't break in. Having an online whiteboard is super handy. We just use a lot of times a Google Doc or a Trello board, or some simple visual aid that people can share information, move it around, see it visually. And then the daily stand-up's a great opportunity for icebreakers. I think the key word on retrospectives is be creative, keep it interesting. There's a ton of different retrospective methods out there. You can Google and borrow any number of different ways to do it. But the more variety introduced into this, the more interesting you can keep it. It can get pretty dry and boring if you do it the same way every time. One thing that we found that's particularly effective for a number of reasons. One, for time zone, to make sure everybody has time to think about and plan. Two, in technology, we're known to have a lot more introverts in technology than the normal human population. So having, because many people are introverted, and language barriers, we found that it's really helpful to do written feedback ahead of time. Still have the conversation, but ask people to write down their feedback ahead of time and then share it in the meeting. It helps people if they have to translate what they're going to say, or if they're not really comfortable speaking in a group. It helps everyone to think and be more comfortable in that environment when they're prepared. So that's the information that I have to share. Does anybody have any other best practices that they've used, or questions that they'd like to ask about these things in more detail?
No, Paul, just to add something, and is that just the people that is attending the call, you can, as you said before, you can Google. There are a lot of tools there for the daily stand-up, for retrospective, and for other sessions. You can find a lot of ways to make it funnier, to make it easier, to have a different design for boards, etc. So and also remind to all of you guys that when you have any concern, any question, any problem, whatever, regarding Agile, Scrum, feel free to contact the Agile COE. We will be glad to help. We have Adriana Soto there, Adriana Gomez, Mariela Gamboa is there as well, Eduardo Uribe in Costa Rica, and in Colombia it's Andres Zapata and myself, Nelson Echeverry. So please feel free to reach us, and we will be glad to help you wherever you need, guys. Also, if you want to suggest any talk, please contact us. If you have the knowledge to give the talk, or even if you don't and you want us to prepare something that you feel that could be useful for you, feel free.
Thank you, everybody. Just one more thing before we go. I know most of you are probably operating in in some form of Scrum. But if you're not, if you're in an environment where you're not doing daily stand-ups or something close to that, please consider having some type of buddy system where you just check in with each other on a daily basis or on an every other day basis. For me personally, especially when we're working from home all the time, for my first 2 years at Gap, I worked at home because we didn't have an office in Austin at all. Our only office was in Costa Rica. And it made a huge difference for me to have a daily call with my business partner where we just checked in with each other. Hey, what's going on? What is it you're going to try to accomplish today? Here's what I'm going to try to accomplish today. Wow, yesterday was a hard day. I didn't get anything meaningful done. Just having that that buddy or accountability partner is extremely valuable. So if you don't have daily stand-ups during this time where we're always apart, find a way to create some connections. It really helps a lot. Thank you very much for your time, guys. I appreciate it. Reach out to me if I can do anything to help. All my contact information is there on the slide, and I'm happy to share and connect you with others.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you,
Thank
Paul.
you, Paul.
Stay safe.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Have a good
Thank
afternoon.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody. Thank you, Paul. Bye.
Thank you.